Welcome to 10 Things to Know Allergan Breast Implant and the BIA ALCL lawsuit, presented by Beyond Law and Howie Saxon Henry. Howie Saxon Henry and Beyond Law have partnered to pursue individual mass tort actions on behalf of women and their families that have been harmed or suffered injury due to Allergan breast implants. Howie Saxon Henry is a personal injury law firm. Our dedication to handle serious personal injury claims with compassion, professionalism, and expertise has made us one of Canada's top personal injury law firms. Beyond Law is a Toronto-based litigation firm focusing on serious personal injury cases. The firm prides itself on its hands-on and personalized approach. My name is Renee Bennett, and I'm the partner with Howie Saxon Henry. I'm one of the lead counsel handling the Allergan breast implant litigation. With me today is Kate Mizuko. She's a partner at Beyond Law. She is also one of the lead counsel with respect to this litigation. Valerie Lord is an associate lawyer with Howie Saxon Henry, who is also a member of the litigation team. We've already gone through who we are, so I'll move on to the next one. Health Canada, on May 28, 2019, banned Allergan BIA ALCL breast implants after finding significantly higher rates of a type of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma among patients with these textured breast implants. This type of cancer or lymphoma is called BIA ALCL. Kate, perhaps you can start us off with explaining what BIA ALCL is.
Sure. BIA ALCL is a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The breast implant associated component of that, so there's various types of lymphomas, but breast implant associated BIA ALCL is developed around the tissue of the implant, which is why it's given that name, BIA ALCL. It is not a cancer of the breast, but again, it's a cancer of the immune system.
All right, and why are women with these textured implants at more risk of developing this type of lymphoma?
Yeah, so there's various theories right now, and the exact explanation is not known. But what the probably most popular theory is that the textured implant, which is sort of described as having a sandpaper-type surface, has a larger surface area, and it increases the amount of bacteria that's on the outside of the implant. And the body's response to that is to cause sort of chronic inflammation, and that causes a proliferation of the lymphocyte cells in our body, which is what causes lymphoma.
Okay. So how would a person know if they may have BIA ALCL?
One of the most common symptoms we're hearing about and reading about is the sort of sudden increase in size of the breast, and there's a fluid accumulation that's occurring. But there may be pain, swelling, there can be changes to the surface of the skin of the breast, asymmetry of the breast, so different types of symptoms. But again, the one we most commonly hear about is, again, suddenly, a woman may wake up one morning and find that one of her breasts is significantly larger than the other. So certainly any women who, find that they have some of those symptoms or any concerns or questions should be going to see their doctors. There's different tests that will be ordered. There's imaging tests such as ultrasounds and MRIs, but there's also, if there is sort of an identification of fluid, either known without imaging but or identified through the imaging, there'll be a collection of that fluid. If there's a lump identified, there would be a biopsy done, and that's sent to the laboratory for testing. And what they're specifically looking for is a specific antigen, which would be an indication of the lymphoma.
How does a person qualify for this lawsuit?
So right now we are representing women that have been diagnosed with BIA ALCL. If you haven't been diagnosed, but you think you might have symptoms which are suggestive of it, of course you want to go see your doctor right away. But you can also call us to discuss your symptoms and where you're at in terms of investigating those symptoms with your doctors, and we can stay in touch. But the women we are starting cases for or actions for are women that have been diagnosed.
Now, Howie, Saxon, Henry, and Beyond Law are actually commencing mass tort actions. So what is the difference between a mass tort and a class action? Valerie, maybe you can answer that for us.
Sure. So many people are familiar with the term class action because it's in the news quite often. We hear about, Bread class actions or TELUS class actions, and they're often associated with defective medical device products. The biggest difference really is that in a class action, there is one representative plaintiff that represents the interests of the class as a whole. And so that person's job is to communicate with the lawyers, give instructions, present the case to the court. And the representative plaintiff has a duty to act in the best interest of the class members. And so in some cases, that is a really excellent legal mechanism to proceed on. We find, however, that in cases where the damages are significant and are very different for each individual, that pursuing cases on an individual basis or in a mass tort, as they're sort of interchangeable, is really the preferred mechanism. And so it really just means that you will have an individual case against the defendant, and in this case it would be Allergan, the manufacturer of the breast implant, but you will still retain the power in numbers, which makes class action so appealing. Because we do intend to gather a significant amount of cases so that you're not the only one presenting your case against the defendant. So you retain both the power in numbers component, which is obviously advantageous, but then you also retain your own individual rights to decide what you want to do with your case, which if you are a member of a class action, you unfortunately just don't have. It's really the representative plaintiff that is making those decisions. And we find it's really advantageous to have mass tort or individual actions, especially at the settlement stage. And that's because in individual actions, or like I say, mass tort, you will actually get an individual offer if we do get into any settlement negotiations. And you will be the one to decide whether that is a fair and reasonable compensation for you, given all of your circumstances. So how much time off of work you've taken, if you've had any medical expenses, if you've needed attendant care, and you will get to decide whether that's fair for you. And you will get to instruct us as your lawyers on what you wish to do with your case. And again, we just think in these cases where the damages are going to be so different for everyone, that is the preferred mechanism rather than a class action.
Okay, so just so that everyone's clear, with respect to the Allergan breast implant lawsuit, our firm is doing, or our firms, I should say, are partnering to bring mass tort actions. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we are not pursuing this by way of the class action mechanism. Again, that's not to say that our firm does run class actions in other cases because it is a perfectly acceptable, legal mechanism to use in some cases. But for this case in particular, we've decided that mass tort is the most preferred approach. And it doesn't mean that because there is a class action started, which we understand there has been in this case, that you are not allowed to join a mass tort. So we definitely encourage anyone who has been diagnosed with BIA ALCL to at least contact us, and I'm happy to go over what the differences are so that people can make the best decision for them.
But it's fair to say that those individuals who have been diagnosed with BIA ALCL are probably going to have higher damages with respect to their injuries than other people who simply have concerns about these implants and want them removed.
That's correct, and that's where our decision to do this case as a mass tort comes in. Class actions are very good mechanisms when the damages for all the class members are relatively low, so that it doesn't make sense to pursue a case that would be very expensive in terms of engaging experts or going all the way to trial, only to recover, a few $1,000s, because unfortunately our law sometimes for anxiety and concerns just is not that favorable in Canada. But for cases like these where there's significant damages in terms of a pretty critical medical diagnosis, removal surgery for breast implants, and then all those cares associated with them, it makes sense to run them on an individual basis rather, again, than the class action.
So Kate, perhaps you can explain what the costs are of pursuing this type of a lawsuit for the individual, for the woman.
Sure. So if you are interested in speaking with us about a potential case, we encourage you to call us. We will speak to you by phone and set up a meeting if that's appropriate. But that consultation process is done at no cost, and we're happy to take those calls. And again, as Valerie indicated, provide you with more information so you can certainly make an informed decision about what's right for you. If we speak with a woman and we can confirm that there is a diagnosis of BIA ALCL and the woman wants to pursue a lawsuit, then we would be retained on a contingency fee basis. And what that means is we're not asking for you to pay any money up front. We're not going to ask you to pay any money throughout the litigation. You won't receive any monthly bills from us. But we will get paid at the end of the day if we're successful in recovering damages for you. If we're not successful, then you do not pay us. And the two firms are working together, but it doesn't mean that you're entering into two contingency fee agreements. There's one agreement that's entered into, and you're not being charged any additional fees, even though you're going to have the benefit of two firms working for you on this case.
I know that there are some limitations, time limits, with respect to bringing action. Can you explain for us, Kate, what time limitations there may be in this particular case?
So generally, you have 2 years to sue from the time you knew or ought to have known that you had damages as a result of someone's wrongdoing. So in this case, it would be 2 years from when you knew or ought to have known that the breast implants caused you to develop the BIA ALCL and then sustain damages, which is your losses, your harms and losses that arise from that diagnosis. But every case is different, and so really it's a determination that's made on a case-by-case basis. So what we do is we encourage you to, again, call us, and we'll go through the different factors in your case and the circumstances of your case, and we'll let you know whether or not you're within time to bring a lawsuit. And if there's, in some cases that there can be a little bit of a gray area where there's some arguments that have to be made that you have time to commence a lawsuit. And again, that's something we can discuss with you once we learn about your personal story.
How long does this type of a lawsuit take?
Lawsuits can take quite a while. They're not, unfortunately, short journeys. In general, we sort of say on average, personal injury lawsuits take about between 3 and 6 years. And there's a variety of factors that come into play. The nature of the case, there's different, backlogs at the courts that we have no choice but to sort of deal with. So every case is different, but again, it's not a short journey, but it's an important journey for anyone that's making that decision to go forward. And certainly we do our very best to move your action forward as quickly as possible while not jeopardizing your case in any way.
So we've already talked about that there's no upfront cost, and if we don't recover money on behalf of any of these women, that they're not going to have to pay us any legal fees. But what type or amount of compensation might they be entitled to?
So it wouldn't be possible for me right now, or any of us right now, to give a dollar figure for a case, and certainly one that would reflect every woman's story and experience. Because as Valerie has discussed, the damages for each case are going to be very different. So that's something that will happen throughout the process. When we get to that phase, and certainly we're in a position to assess the case, we will have those conversations with you. But what I can tell you is the types of damages that you can claim. And again, damages are what you're paid for your harms and losses. So we have damages for pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life. And in Canada, there is a cap for those types of damages. It's approaching $390,000 right now, and it increases monthly with inflation. And that is for your pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life. And that would be up until the point of settlement or trial, but also if you have any long-term symptoms or impairments as a result of your injuries, then it also continues into the future. Claims can be made for loss of earnings. So if you have to take time off work because you're receiving treatment, whether it be the explant process or you have to undergo radiation or chemotherapy afterwards, and again you require time off work, you can claim those lost wages. There may be other claims for someone. They may perhaps, when they're off work, miss out on an opportunity to be promoted within their company. And so there could be a claim for that lost opportunity. So again, even within that category of loss of earnings, there's going to be different scenarios that apply for different women. And that's why, again, we go back to sort of trying to understand why mass tort makes sense in this case, but it's because of the different scenarios that are going to apply for different women. In addition to those areas, you can claim for healthcare costs, both in the past and into the future. If you've required assistance around your home, you can claim for housekeeping and home maintenance costs and other types of out-of-pockets that you may incur. Those are all what we call compensatory damages. The claims can also be made for punitive damages, which, unlike the first set of damages, which I talked about, which are intended to compensate the plaintiff, to try to put the plaintiff back in the position they would have been had they not developed BIA ALCL. So these punitive damages are designed to punish the defendant.
All right.
If I can just add to that, actually,
Sure.
this case did touch on it. Compensation in a class action is very different. Compensation in a class action, a settlement will be reached in the best interest of the class as a whole, and so it will make sure that the settlement is generally fair and reasonable for the class as a whole. And in some cases, again, that is perfectly acceptable, and that is in the best interest of justice. In a mass tort, we will make sure that your compensation is actually fair and reasonable for your own particular circumstances.
So how can you join this lawsuit? You can email, call us, or submit an online inquiry, and we will be here anytime to answer your questions and to deal with your inquiries. To contact us, you can call toll-free 1-877-704-0043. That's 1-877-704-0043. Or you can simply go to AllerganLawsuitsCanada.com. Thank you for your time.